The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. You're back with me again on Durian ASEAN, where we bring you interesting and critical discussion on Southeast Asian matters. This time we are going to focus on Asia with the female genital mutilation that has been seen as a common practice among some segment of society in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general. With me is John Chua. Earlier on, he has gave quite an explanation about the FGM or FGC in his view. But I want to go further. I want to know more about the FGM or FGC in this case. Is it religiously rooted or culturally rooted?
Well, I think it's probably both religiously and culturally rooted. In the case of Islamic countries, there are some Islamic cultures that reject it, FGC.
Which countries are there?
Which countries reject it or don't have it? I mean, as far as we know, countries like Jordan, we don't know of the existence of FGC in Jordan, or Turkey, for example. We're not aware of FGC existing in Turkey. Maybe more research has been done, but as far as we know, as far as we can tell, it's not done in those countries. Even in mainstream Saudi Arabia, it is not really common. There are minorities in Saudi Arabia that practice it. I've heard that in the south of Saudi Arabia, towards the Yemeni border, that you can find FGC.
I see.
But mainstream Saudi Arabia rejects this. So why would this be the case? We're not sure.
Especially in the Islamic religion, there are some communities that believe it is wajib or a must for Muslims.
Yes. Because there are different schools of thought within Islam, within Sunni Islam.
Which community that think that it is a must?
In Southeast Asia, generally the Shafiq school believe that it is a must. However, in Kurdistan, I've seen video evidence of this. In Kurdistan, in northern Iraq, the Shafiq school there, a cleric has rejected it. So even within specific schools of Islam, it will vary from country to country. So far, I have not found any rhyme or reason. There's no logic to it. It's just different from country to country. When we talk to the Dawoodi Bohras in India, they belong to a subset of Shia in their culture.
And they are very minority community.
And they have a small minority even within Shia, they are a small minority. And they thought that, when I spoke to them, they thought it was specifically to their religion, and they thought that the Sunnis don't practice this. Whereas actually, I encounter more Sunni cultures that practice this than Shia cultures that practice it. So, there's no rhyme or reason. In Iran, for example, where we are making inroads, our partners have met up with the Iranian government, and starting to convince them that this is FGC is not a good thing. So the Shiite government there is leaning towards passing laws and regulations and things like that to outlaw it. I don't think such laws have passed yet, but they're seriously considering them. Mainly because I think it's only the Sunni minority in Iran that practices this. So, there is a big confrontation between Shia and Sunni, as you know, in the Middle East.
When you mentioned that it is also culturally rooted, in some of these Asian countries, especially in Southeast Asia, where does this culture come from? Is it its Hindu past or is it its animistic past?
When I say it's culturally rooted, I mean, I think they add a layer of culture on top of the religious practice. So even though female genital cutting is not mentioned in the Quran, and it's mentioned in the Hadith, there is no consensus within the Islamic community whether these Hadiths are strong or weak. Some people say it's weak, and vague, and some people say, it's strong.
And some people say it's for men.
Yes,
because the hadith about a person needs to clean himself and shave his beard, and the last one would be circumcision, and they assume that it's for men.
Yes, because women don't usually have mustaches. You have to cut your mustache. That's why people think it's for men only. But there is one specific hadith that talks about the Prophet Muhammad telling people to cut, but not cut too much. It's very vague. In my opinion, as a non-religious scholar, the hadith it's not clear. So there's a great debate within the Islamic community whether that hadith is clear or not. But let's assume it's clear that it's an obligation. Let's assume that that's the case. But in individual communities that I visited and its practice, they add a layer of culture on top of it. So, for example, in Iraq or in Kurdistan, rather, I've heard explanations like the women who are not cut cannot serve food or prepare food because her hands will be unclean.
I see.
So that's there. In southern Thailand, in the Patani region, a religious teacher told me the reason why it's cut is to let the air out. And I was unclear what the air meant. And I think in our conversation, you and I, you explained to me that in Kelantan culture, in Kelantanese culture, which is very similar to Patani culture, that there's this concept of internal wind in the body, and your health is, I suppose, regulated by this internal wind in the body, and that might be what this religious teacher was talking about. But that's a local cultural practice that's added on top of a so-called religious practice. So do you see what I mean? The explanation is local.
They still hold strongly with the idea of sunat in the Malay world. Is it also because it's part of their identity?
Yes. In the case, of the Patanis, the way I see it, my observation at least, is really part of their identity to separate themselves from the Thai Buddhists. So, if you wear a hijab to cover your hair, that's also part of your identity as a Patani. FGC,
the Shia minority in India as well, right?
I believe so. Yes, the Dawoodi Boras. To be accepted into their community as a woman, you have to be cut. If you're not cut, you're not accepted into their community. So you have the same kinds of issue. It's a marker, basically, to distinguish yourself versus the larger community. What happens? One of the main problems that we have researching this issue of FGC around the world is that it often happens in minority communities within a more mainstream context. And so FGC becomes a marker of the difference between you and the larger world within your society, within the women's society. Yeah.
Interesting.
So if you're not cut, you're just not one of them, and that's a problem.
It's like either us or them, us against them. Sort of identity.
Sort of, and many of these places, the minorities are under siege. In Patani, I think the Dawoodi Boras feel like they are under siege also. They are very insular as a result. You can sense that in the Singaporean context, being Malay and being Muslim requires you to be cut as well. So that's another marker of your identity.
I see.
According to people who have studied this about the Malay Muslim community.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss further on the FGM in Asia.